Number 15. A nation built on silk secrets, Uzbekistan sits at the crossroads of empires, where fortunes were made and lost on threads of silk. Samarkand's azure domes still catch the morning light the same way they did when Marco Polo first gazed upon them in wonder. But this wasn't just about beauty. This was about power. The Silk Road transformed humble oasis towns into glittering capitals that rivaled Rome itself. Walk through Bukhara's ancient streets today, and you're treading on paths where Chinese merchants counted silver coins beside Persian spice traders. The wealth was staggering. A single caravan could carry enough silk to buy entire villages. Yet behind the splendor lay ruthless calculation. Khans imposed taxes so crushing that caravans sometimes arrived empty, their goods sold just to survive the journey. In remote valleys, families still raised silkworms, using methods their ancestors perfected 8 centuries ago. They guard these secrets jealously: the exact temperature, the perfect mulberry leaves, the precise moment when cocoons must be harvested. To them, silk isn't just thread. It's liquid gold passed down through generations. But Uzbekistan's relationship with tradition runs deeper than commerce. Every gesture, every word carries the weight of centuries. And that brings us to a rule so fundamental that breaking it can turn friends into strangers with a single motion. Number 14. The forbidden left-hand rule. Your left hand could betray you in Uzbekistan before you even speak a word. For over 1,000 years, offering anything bread, money, even a simple handshake with your left hand has been considered a profound insult. It's not superstition. It's survival. Picture yourself invited to a family feast. The table groans under platters of steaming plov, fresh naan bread, and sweet melons. Your host tears a piece of bread with reverent care and extends it toward you. Reach out with your left hand and watch the warmth drain from their eyes. To them, you've just contaminated something sacred. The rule stems from ancient nomadic hygiene practices, but it evolved into something much deeper: a test of respect. Even in modern Tashkent's glass-wall cafes, business people will awkwardly shift their briefcases and phones just to free their right hand for greetings. Tourists stumble into this trap constantly. They fumble for their wallets with the wrong hand, unknowingly announcing their ignorance to everyone watching. Locals won't correct you. They're too polite. But they'll remember. This careful dance of etiquette is just the beginning. In Uzbekistan, respect isn't just given. It's performed, measured, and weighed in gestures so small they're almost invisible. And nowhere is this more obvious than when love itself becomes a public spectacle. Number 13. The wedding that lasts a week. Forget everything you know about wedding budgets. In Uzbekistan, a single celebration can bankrupt 3 generations and nobody bats an eye. The dekhiyé isn't just a ceremony, it is a declaration of war against financial sense. Families mortgage their homes to rent venues that hold 1,000 guests. Entire neighborhoods mobilize like military units. One street handles decorations, another organizes the live music, and grandmothers coordinate enough plov to feed a small army. The bride and groom almost become secondary characters in their own story. But here's what nobody tells you about these epic celebrations: the pressure is suffocating. Young couples often begin married life drowning in debt because refusing to throw a spectacular wedding is social suicide. Your reputation, your family's honor, even your children's future marriage prospects depend on how lavishly you celebrate. The traditions themselves are mesmerizing. Dawn breaks to the sound of drummers summoning the neighborhood for communal breakfast. Professional dancers battle each other in competitions that last hours. Ancient songs echo off apartment buildings, as if Samarkand's medieval courts have been transported to the present. Yet beneath the jeweled costumes and flowing wine lies a darker current. These celebrations reveal how social pressure in Uzbekistan can transform joy into obligation. And that pressure becomes even more complex when it involves something the Soviet state tried very hard to control. Number 12. Vodka at the breakfast table. Here's a contradiction that confuses every visitor. Uzbekistan is overwhelmingly Muslim, yet vodka flows at family gatherings like water. Thanks 7 decades of Soviet rule for this cultural paradox that still shapes the nation today. Stalin's commissars didn't just collectivize farms, they collectivized drinking habits. Toasting became a civic duty. Refusing vodka at celebrations was treated as political suspicion. The bottle became a symbol of brotherhood, hospitality, and Soviet solidarity all mixed together. Today, the contradiction persists in fascinating ways. Devout families pray 5 times daily, then break out homemade brandy when guests arrive. Rural festivals feature both imams' blessings and wine-tasting competitions. In Tashkent's upscale districts, bars serve vodka cocktails with Arabic calligraphy etched into the glasses. The unspoken rule is simple. Drinking is private hospitality, not public intoxication. A host who doesn't offer alcohol seems cold, unwelcoming. But stumbling drunk through Tashkent streets brings shame on your entire family. This careful balance between faith and festivity reflects Uzbekistan's genius for adaptation. They've learned to honor multiple traditions simultaneously without abandoning any completely. And speaking of things that must never be abandoned, there's one food item in Uzbekistan that's considered so sacred, dropping it accidentally requires immediate ritual purification. Number 11. Bread you can never throw away in Uzbekistan. Bread isn't food, it's a manifestation of divine blessing. Drop a piece of naan on the ground, and you've just committed a small sacrilege that demands immediate action. You must pick it up, kiss it gently, and place it somewhere high and clean. Throwing bread in garbage is unthinkable. Watch a master baker at dawn, carving intricate geometric patterns into each loaf before sliding it into clay ovens that have burned continuously for generations. These designs aren't decorative. They're prayers made visible, symbols of prosperity and protection baked into every meal. The reverence runs so deep that government meetings traditionally open with ceremonial bread breaking. During Soviet famines, families hid moldy crusts rather than discard them, whispering that bread thrown away will curse the household for 7 years. Tourists learn this lesson harshly. They casually toss leftover bread, only to watch their Uzbek companions go pale with horror. Locals will quietly retrieve the discarded pieces and perform the purification ritual themselves, too embarrassed to explain, but too faithful to ignore the transgression. This sacred relationship with bread reveals how survival and spirituality intertwine in Uzbek culture. Every crumb carries the weight of history, famine, and faith. But while bread unites families around the table, another tradition, one that officially doesn't exist, quietly divides them in ways outsiders rarely see. Number 10. The hidden world of polygamy. Officially, polygamy is illegal in Uzbekistan. Unofficially, it thrives in remote villages where religious ceremonies create marriages the state pretends not to see. This shadow practice reveals the constant tension between modern law and ancient custom. Men with multiple wives navigate a careful dance of deception. One wife holds legal status. Others remain invisible to bureaucrats, but acknowledged by communities. Family gatherings become elaborate performances where cousins and housekeepers are actually co-wives, maintaining the fiction for safety. The motivations are complex. Some women accept these arrangements as economic security in regions where jobs are scarce. Others find themselves trapped by family pressure and limited options. The first wife often becomes a gatekeeper, deciding whether additional wives are welcome or resented. What shocks outsiders is how normalized these arrangements become. Children grow up with multiple mothers, communities develop intricate etiquette for managing plural households, and even some educated urban families quietly maintain these structures. The risk is real exposure can bring criminal charges. Yet the practice persists because it fills gaps that modern Uzbek society hasn't addressed: caring for widows, managing agricultural labor, and maintaining family honor across generations. This hidden world shows how laws can't simply erase centuries of tradition. They just drive it underground, where it evolves new forms of secrecy and survival. And speaking of things that must remain hidden, even expressing love publicly can bring its own dangers. Number 9. No kissing in public. Romance in Uzbekistan comes with invisible boundaries that can turn a sweet moment into a public scandal. Holding hands raises eyebrows. Hugging draws stares. Kissing in public can bring police intervention for violating public decency. This isn't just cultural conservatism, it's enforced modesty with real consequences. Young couples develop elaborate strategies for affection. Hidden parks after midnight, coded text messages, and stolen moments in empty subway cars. Love becomes a guerrilla operation against social surveillance. The rules hit foreign couples hardest. European tourists who naturally embrace or kiss goodbye at hotels find themselves surrounded by disapproving silence. Some establishments post discreet signs requesting appropriate behavior, but most rely on the crushing weight of collective judgment. Even entertainment reflects these restrictions. Uzbek films edit out intimate scenes that would be routine in Hollywood. Television shows end kisses before lips touch. Dating apps require careful navigation between genuine connection and cultural landmines. Yet these restrictions create their own romance. Forbidden's love carries extra intensity. A secretly held hand becomes more meaningful than public displays elsewhere. Couples develop private languages of glances and gestures that outsiders can't decode. This careful choreography of affection shows how personal intimacy becomes political in societies where tradition and modernity clash. But if love must be hidden, death reveals beliefs that are even more surprising. Number 8. Funerals with forbidden whispers. Death in Uzbekistan unleashes rituals that blend Islam, shamanism, and Soviet-era secrecy in the ceremonies outsiders rarely witness. The official mourning follows Islamic law, but underneath flow currents of older beliefs that refuse to die. Women are discouraged from attending cemetery burials, based on ancient ideas about spiritual contamination. Yet they control the home mourning, organizing vast communal meals where entire neighborhoods gather to share grief through food. The massive plov cauldrons become symbols of collective support. But listen carefully during these gatherings, and you'll hear whispered practices that would horrify Orthodox clerics. Names of the deceased are passed secretly among mourners, believed to help souls find peace. Fortune tellers sometimes appear, offering protective amulets against restless spirits. The contradictions are striking. Families who strictly follow Islamic prayer schedules will quietly consult shamanic practitioners about grave placement. Modern educated Uzbeks who dismiss superstition still avoid speaking ill of the recently dead, fearing supernatural retribution. These funeral mysteries reveal how multiple belief systems coexist in Uzbek culture. Official religion provides structure, but older traditions supply emotional comfort that formal prayers can't match. It's a spiritual survival strategy developed over centuries of conquering empires. And speaking of survival, Uzbekistan's history includes punishments so extreme that touching the wrong wall could cost your life. Number 7. A death sentence for touching walls. Medieval Bukhara enforced respect through terror. The Ark Fortress, seat of the emir's power, was surrounded not just by walls, but by an invisible barrier of fear. Touch those walls without permission and face execution. The rule wasn't about security, it was about absolute submission. The logic was theological. Rulers claimed divine appointment, making their residences extensions of heavenly authority. Every stone became sacred, every approach a potential sacrilege. Foreign merchants and diplomats who misunderstood this rule paid with their lives, their bodies left as warnings to others. Today, tourists climb those same walls for selfies, unaware they're standing where death once waited for the ignorant. Local guides sometimes pause at certain spots, their voices dropping as they recount tales of executions for seemingly minor infractions. This extreme enforcement reveals how power operated in pre-modern Uzbekistan. Fear wasn't just a tool of control, it was a complete system that shaped every interaction between ruler and ruled. The architecture itself became weaponized, turning everyday spaces into tests of loyalty. These medieval extremes may seem distant, but their echoes persisted well into the modern era. Uzbekistan's reputation for authoritarian control didn't emerge from nowhere. It grew from centuries of conditioning that made absolute obedience seem natural. Number 6. The surveillance state that never slept under Islam Karamov's rule. Uzbekistan perfected the art of watching its own people. Hotel rooms came with hidden microphones. Taxi drivers reported passenger conversations. Even casual criticism of cotton prices could earn a visit from state security. The paranoia was suffocating. Families developed elaborate codes for discussing politics if they dared discuss them at all. Children learned early that certain topics were forbidden, certain names never spoken aloud. The state inserted itself into private thoughts through networks of informants who could be anyone, neighbors, colleagues, even relatives. Travelers described an eerie sensation of constant observation. Phone calls crackled with suspicious static. Hotel staff asked probing questions about business plans. Even religious discussions were monitored, with attendance at certain mosques noted by plainclothes observers. The psychological damage lingers today, despite political reforms. Many Uzbeks still lower their voices when discussing government, reflectively checking over their shoulders before expressing opinions. Self-censorship became so ingrained that freedom of speech feels dangerous, even when it's legally protected. This culture of silence served the state's economic interests perfectly. When your population is conditioned to obedience, implementing policies like forced labor becomes almost simple. Number 5. Cotton fields of forced labor every autumn. Uzbekistan transformed into a mobilized state where citizens became unpaid agricultural workers. Schools empty, universities closed, and government offices shut down as millions were sent to harvest cotton. It wasn't request, it was command. Children as young as 10 picked cotton under blazing sun, their small fingers bleeding from the sharp bowls. University students slept in cold barracks, working quotas that determined their academic grades. Teachers, doctors, and office workers abandoned their professions for weeks, returning to primitive agriculture against their will. The economic logic was brutal. Cotton exports generated hard currency the government desperately needed. Human costs were irrelevant compared to foreign exchange earnings. Families couldn't refuse without risking jobs, education access, and social standing. International pressure eventually forced reforms, but the psychological scars remained deep. An entire generation of Uzbeks associates education with forced labor, autumn with fear, and government promises with exploitation. The cotton industry still dominates rural life, though now workers are supposed to be volunteers. This systematic exploitation reveals how authoritarian states can mobilize populations for economic goals regardless of human cost. The cotton fields became laboratories for testing how much suffering people would accept in silence. Yet alongside this organized brutality, another Uzbekistan existed, one where faith provided refuge from state oppression. Number 4. Shrines that promise miracles across Uzbekistan's landscape. Ancient shrines offer what modern life cannot: hope, healing, and direct connection to the divine. Pilgrims arrive carrying impossible burdens: infertility, chronic illness, family disasters, seeking miracles from long-dead saints whose power transcends official religion. These sacred sites operate according to their own logic. Visitors tie colorful scraps of cloth to trees, each piece representing a prayer for healing or guidance. They circle tombs in ritual patterns, whispering supplications in languages that predate Islam. Bread offerings pile up on stone altars where ancient and modern beliefs merge. The practices horrify Orthodox clerics but provide profound comfort to believers. A woman struggling with infertility finds peace at Imam al-Bukhari's tomb. A farmer facing bankruptcy prays at Bahaduddin Naqshband's shrine for divine intervention. The faithful leave transformed, carrying renewed hope back to their daily struggles. During Soviet persecution of religion, these sites became subtle forms of resistance. When mosques were closed and clerics imprisoned, shrines continued operating through unofficial networks of caretakers and pilgrims. The state couldn't arrest dead saints or prohibit private prayer. This parallel spiritual world reveals Uzbekistan's genius for preserving faith under pressure. Official atheism pushed religion underground, where it evolved more flexible, personal forms that proved impossible to eradicate. But spiritual refuge is just one escape from modern pressures. For the truly adventurous, Uzbekistan's mountains offer a different kind of transcendence, one that can be permanently final. Number 3. Mountains that swallow travelers, Uzbekistan's high peaks don't just challenge climbers, they consume them. The Tian Shan and Pamir ranges create their own weather systems, where clear skies can become deadly blizzards within minutes. Every year, hikers venture into this wilderness and simply vanish, leaving only scattered gear and grieving families. Local legends speak of mountain spirits who test intruders' worthiness. Villagers warn that certain peaks demand blood sacrifice, claiming lives from those who climb without proper respect. These aren't just superstitions, they're survival wisdom encoded in folklore, warning about avalanche zones and weather patterns that can kill the unprepared. During the Great Game, these mountains hid British and Russian spies playing deadly games of imperial chess. Secret bases were carved into cliffsides, accessible only to those who knew hidden paths through seemingly impassable terrain. Some of these installations remain, their rusted equipment testament to ambitions that the mountains ultimately defeated. Modern adventurers face the same unforgiving conditions. GPS devices fail in remote valleys. Rescue helicopters can't reach certain elevations. Solo trekkers who break legs or lose their way have no options except prayer and endurance. Yet the beauty justifies the risk. Sunrise over Chaco Peak reveals landscapes that exist nowhere else on Earth. Alpine lakes reflect skies so clear they seem artificial. For those who survive the encounter, these mountains provide memories that outlast all other experiences. After the solitude of deadly heights, returning to human civilization brings its own overwhelming assault on the senses. Number 2. Bazaars that never sleep step into chorsu. Bazaar and prepare for sensory overload that borders on hallucination. The maze of stalls defies logic. Silk scarves hanging beside sheep heads. Gold teeth merchants next to spice pyramids that glow like crushed jewels. This isn't just commerce. It's controlled chaos that has operated continuously for over 1,000 years. The sounds assault you first. Sellers shouting prices in Uzbek, Russian, and broken English simultaneously. Meat cleavers rhythmically chopping through bone. Children laughing as they dodge between cart-pushing porters. Then the smells hit: fresh bread, grilled meat, leather, spices, and underlying everything. The earthen scent of turnips and onions being sold by the ton. But bazaars serve functions beyond buying and selling. They're information exchanges where news travels faster than internet. Marriage brokers operate from tea stalls, matching families through whispered negotiations. Political opinions circulate carefully through trusted networks of old friends. The bargaining is performance art. Tourists who pay asking prices are pitied as either wealthy fools or culturally ignorant. The dance of negotiation: initial shock, dramatic counteroffers, shared tea, final handshakes creates relationships that outlast individual transactions. Hidden in back alleys, illegal money changers offer better rates than banks. Smuggled goods from Afghanistan appear and disappear based on Border Patrol schedules. The bazaar operates according to its own laws, enforced by merchant families whose influence predates any government. After hours of this sensory bombardment, visitors stagger out exhausted but transformed. The bazaar reveals Uzbekistan's commercial soul: chaotic, ancient, and utterly unstoppable. Yet all this cultural complexity, all these layers of tradition and survival, rest on one fundamental principle that shapes every interaction in Uzbek society. Number 1. The taboo you must never break above all other rules. One principle governs life in Uzbekistan with religious intensity. You must never, ever disrespect hospitality. A guest is considered from God, and failing to serve them generously brings shame that lasts generations. This isn't just politeness, it's survival coded in the cultural DNA. Nomadic. Ancestors depended on hospitality networks to cross vast deserts where rejection meant death. That ancient reciprocity still shapes modern behavior in ways that astonish outsiders. Families will empty their savings to feed unexpected visitors. Children give up their beds for strangers. Mothers serve their best food to guests while family members eat leftovers. Refusing this generosity isn't just rude, it's a profound insult that questions the host's honor, competence, and relationship with the divine. The pressure is immense. Host families sometimes go into debt entertaining guests because serving anything less than a feast suggests poverty or selfishness. The unspoken message is clear. We value your presence more than our comfort. Break this sacred trust, criticize the food, refuse offered gifts, fail to praise your host's generosity, and watch relationships crumble instantly. Word spreads through communities about ungrateful guests who brought shame to generous families. This golden rule unlocks everything about Uzbek culture. The elaborate weddings, the sacred bread, the silent tolerance of government oppression all stem from this fundamental belief that generosity defines human worth. Understanding this final truth transforms every other fact we've explored. Uzbekistan isn't just a country of fascinating contradictions. It is a society built on the radical idea that how you treat others matters more than anything else you might accomplish. In a world growing more divided, perhaps that's not such an ancient concept after all.